Here we go. We are in there, sir. We shall. Mhm. Good evening to everyone. Welcome to Ministers on the Mic. Pastor Antoine Miller sitting here in Stockton, California. We are just commemorating 100 years of the burning of Black Wall Street. And with that in mind, we thought we'd start off with one of those good old civil rights songs because it seems that the more things change, the more things stay the same. Um, and yesterday marked 100 years since Greenwood district of Tulsa, Oklahoma, also known as Black Wall Street, was burned to the ground. Uh, Firebomb. As the story goes, a young black man by the name of Richard, or is it Dick Yearwood, I believe it was, and I think I just got the wrong last name, made a advance on a young white girl by the name of Sarah Page, 19-year-old young black man, 17-year-old young white woman, and she screamed, or so the story, the legend goes, and at her scream, it was the beginning of all hell. The incident took place on May 3rd, 1921. As he sat in jail from May 3rd, Greenwood literally became a powder keg, waiting for something to happen. And on May 31st, my beloved, something sure enough happened. Black men armed themselves and went down to the jail because word was there was a militia that gathered up that was saying, give us the N word that you got in your jail. They wanted to lynch him. They wanted to hang him. They wanted to burn him. They wanted to do what was customary of the day. They wanted to end his life and damn any black man that dared get in the way. As a returning veteran from World War I, there was a black gentleman there who had his gun. A white gentleman stepped to him and asked, what are you doing with that gun? N-word. And he says, hoping I don't have to use it. He said, well, you sure hell ain't gonna use it here. And as the white man grabbed the gun went off. The beginning of the end of what was known as Black Wall Street at that time. Thriving, thriving township of African American entrepreneurs, businesses, homes, churches. At the end of 24 hours, some 300 plus African Americans had lost their lives. Bodies, many thrown into mass graves, many just taken down to the river and thrown into the deepest part. Others thrown into an incinerator and immediately cremated. We're 100 years out from that event. And on the very next day, this was the headline from the local papers regarding Tulsa, Oklahoma. Headline number one was literally a complaint that two white people had been killed. Headline number two, that other white people had been shot in the uprising. Bottom line, the blame for the whole incident was placed on the victims. That if those Negras had not been so uppity and stayed in their place, what had happened would never had happened. Welcome to Ministers on the Mic, June 1, 2021. I'm Pastor Antoine Miller here in Stockton. Excited to have with me my special guest, my friend, my brother, Pastor Leonard Dew. Pastor Dew, come on, say hello to the people.
God bless. Hello. Hello. So very grateful to be with you tonight. Um, and certainly our prayers are out to your co-host, Dr. Hillis, on tonight. He and his family there um, as they go through those physical challenges. But tonight, I'm grateful to be with you on tonight. Such a um, powerful night, such a mark in history, and I'm grateful to join the conversation tonight.
Man, I'm grateful to have you. First, let me read the headline from June 1, the Morning Tulsa World.
Mm.
2 whites shot dead in riot. 3 local guard units are out. Race war rages for hours after outbreak at courthouse. Troops and armed men patrolling the streets. Headline number 2. Many more whites are shot. Whites advancing into Little Africa.
Mm.
Negro death list about 15. Scores badly wounded, removed to hospital, and 3 die on the way. Negroes fleeing the city. List of dead mount. And again, the race war rages hours after the courthouse with troops and armed men patrolling the street. Pastor Dew, we're 100 years out. And I had hashtagged this as untaught American history. Because for many of us, myself included, we didn't learn it when we were going to Oakland public high schools.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
We didn't learn it when we were in college.
Mm-hmm.
I was fortunate enough to learn it in between high school and college, and had the chance to meet and to get to know Dr. Robert McKnight and Dr. Cecilia Arrington.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. McKnight, chair of African American Studies at that time at Laney College, and Dr. Cecilia Arrington, a woman who really put the wood to my behind as a young man on what it meant to be a Black man.
Mm.
When I remember when she told us this story, when I couldn't believe it, when I asked Dr. McKnight about this story, it was something that I'm like, wow, that really happened. And McKnight, the way anyone that knows Pastor McKnight, well, Miller, you need to understand, young man, it was a different time. They didn't like us now, but they hated us then.
Mm. So who was the teacher over at the instructor at Laney for African American Studies?
Robert McKnight.
Robert McKnight. Yes.
Pastor of Church on the Rock in the city of Oakland.
Got it. Yes.
Who used to dazzle us with his style of dress as he came in his velvet jacket.
That's what I remember. That's it. We can't get off subject, but that was it. He dazzled us. Yeah. I remember the days of coming into Laney, and coming just to hear those instructions, just to hear. I was one of the I didn't go to Laney. I went to Cal State East Bay Hayward, and I was always there. And Laney, people actually thought I was there, but I enjoyed his studies. When you mentioned it was like something that rung, I was like, wait a minute. Yeah. Powerful. And I'm like you. I learned of Tulsa right about my 12th grade year. I learned of Tulsa. I graduated from Skyline.
That's okay.
We won't go there, man. We won't go there tonight.
You still East Oakland.
It's still East Oakland. It's still East. And I remember the studies around my 12th grade year. I had all my credits, and so my internship was at the Port of Oakland. And so we had the director of the Port of Oakland at that time, and that's how I got introduced to come over to Laney, and was having sitting in some of the studies and learned of the massacre, learned of Black Wall Street. And
Mm-hmm.
Mr. John Henry at Port of Oakland um, introduced me to come there and to sit for a couple of the instructions. And it was a powerful time. And of course, every Black History Month, since I sat in some of those classes, I can remember going over to, and this will probably blow you. I remember even being invited over to Lowell in San Francisco
Mm-hmm.
to do a presentation on Black Wall Street.
Yeah.
And that was major deep, because you're looking at the early 90s, going over to Lowell and doing a presentation about Black Wall Street. All thanks to coming over there to Laney and sitting and watching that dressed up instructor.
Yeah. Who is in his own right quite a pastor. I'm
Yes,
grateful
yes,
for
yes.
his mentorship of me
Mhm.
while I was at Laney. And I don't want to get too far away from the subject. I remember
Yes,
his
yes.
biggest problem with me as a student was that I had never bothered to purchase the textbook.
Oh gosh.
And
Oh
I had
gosh.
got an A in his class, and
Oh, oh wow.
he and I well, it was sheer luck to some extreme, and just sitting in the library using the books that was there, and then just looking up stuff. See, this was back before we had internet, y'all. Had to
Mm.
get the microfiche cards in the library and go looking for information because I was a poor kid and I couldn't afford all the books for my class. And
My
so when
God.
I would pass different tests, a lot of times it would simply be because I got some information related to
Mhm.
what we were doing that wasn't in the particular textbook. Um,
Mhm.
but I remember, Antoine, if you would just train your mind, oh, you could be brilliant.
That slur of those words.
So a whole lot we're going to say. We've got about 50 minutes to really get into this. Those of you that are
Yes.
joining us, please like, share this, share this, share this. Let's get others involved. If you've got some comments, you've got some thoughts that you like to share, please go ahead and bring them in so I can see what your questions may be, what your comments may be, because trust me, you all have a lot to add to this conversation. Why? Because this conversation affects you, it affects your family, it affects your children, it affects your grandchildren. We're talking
Yes.
about untaught American history, even to this extent, Pastor Do, um,
Yes.
that while people are yet still finding out about it, laws are being enacted and passed in Oklahoma, in Texas, where this curriculum or curriculum that would reveal things like this cannot be taught. And so,
Mhm.
before we deal with that as a secondary question, uh, I want you, because you're somebody who I look up to, I admire. You've got some wise words to share for us. I want you to just give us your thoughts on the destruction of Black Wall Street and the history thereafter.
Dr. Miller, um, a Black community was massacred in Tulsa 100 years ago. Um, a senseless campaign of rage and racism. And when you reached out to me today, all of that pain, all of that pain um, struck something today. All of that pain struck something, struck a core. And uh, I'm glad you reached out, because not only I know yourself, and I know this platform that you have and others. we stand with the Black community in refusing to let this dark chapter be erased, or the achievements, and I'm so glad that we're on tonight, or the achievements of Black Wall Street, Greenwood, to never be forgotten, never to be forgotten. I think about a young man that I read on, that I actually talk about often, a young man by the name of W.D. Williams.
Uh-huh.
Uh, W.D. Williams family owned a movie theater there in Tulsa. And
Dreamland.
yes, 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 yes. A thriving Black business um, in that time, and all those businesses that line the streets there. And just to think that that young man was on his way to the movie theater just to get an extra bag of popcorn.
Mm.
Excuse me, just to get an extra bag of popcorn from his parents' movie house. And how the destruction of that day, this little kid was wanting an extra bag of popcorn just to be able to. Can you imagine today of us being able to walk those streets where now a freeway now resides over where these mass graves are. Um, and I think something that was just so they passed the to be able to respond as far as what they owe, uh, but the mass graves that are there, they just want to put a plaque on the other streets there in Greenwood, just to be able to put a plaque or something. This is where Candyland shop was, or this is where the sewing cleaners were. It's just amazing to me of the rich history that we um, share. Black prosperity is a threat to white supremacy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Our prosperity is a threat to white supremacists. It's a threat, man.
I want to read something that I wrote. I hesitated on posting this on Facebook because it would have been a long post. And
Oh, I
I
thought you were
know
going to go
that,
to Facebook jail.
yeah, and probably didn't want to go to Facebook jail, and then can't do this show tonight. Got to hook it and crook it, get it in where we can get it in.
Right, right.
So, um, and I titled this Red Summer. And the reason I titled it Red Summer, because what happened in the Red Summer of 1919 literally culminates with what we see in 1921 in Tulsa.
Mhm.
So, Red Summer, I wrote the term used by civil rights activist and author James Weldon Johnson. Red Summer is a period from the late spring to early autumn of 1919, during which white supremacist terrorism and racial riots took place. Watch this, in more than 3 dozen cities across the United States, as well as in one rural county in Arkansas. And someone needs to look up the Elaine, Arkansas massacre.
Oh my gosh!
Here's
Yes.
a list of them, and this is 1919.
Mhm.
In rural Georgia, a riot of Jenkins County led to 6 deaths, as
Mhm.
well as the destruction of various property by arson, including the Carswell Grove Baptist Church and 3 Black Masonic lodges in Millen, Georgia. All properties destroyed were Black owned. May 10th, the Charleston riot resulted in the injury of 5 whites and 18 black men, along with the deaths of three others. Isaac Dr. William Brown, James Talbot, all died. Early July, a white racial riot in Longview, Texas, led to the death of at least four men. And they say at least four men because
Wow.
others had disappeared, never to be heard from or seen again. July 3rd, Bisbee, Arizona, uh, was attacked by the 10th U.S. Cavalry, an African American unit known as the Buffalo Soldiers. So, literally, the soldiers were attacked by the community in Arizona. July 14th, the Garfield Park riot took place in Garfield Park, Indianapolis, where there were multiple people, including a 7-year-old girl who had been shot and wounded when gunfire broke out. Washington and Norfolk. This took place from July 19th through the 23rd, beginning on the 19th in Washington, D.C. 4 days of mob violence against black individuals and businesses perpetrated by white men, many of whom were in their military uniforms of all three services at that time, in response to a rumored arrest of a black man, in a rumored rape of a white woman. The men rioted randomly, beat black people on the street, pulled others off streetcars, and attacked them. On July 31st in Norfolk, Virginia, a white mob attacked a homecoming celebration for African American veterans of World War I. In other words, as soldiers came home from war, they were attacked by their fellow citizens so that these Negroes would know their place and not get too uppity in thinking that their uniforms made them special. There's the Chicago riots, July 27th through August 12th. Also in 1919, beginning on the 27th, the Chicago race riot began. Watch this, and this is the greatest massacre during the Red Summer at a beach, Lake Michigan, when Eugene Williams, I believe he was a 12 to 14-year-old black youth, swam to the wrong area on the south side of the beach that was used by whites. He was stoned. They threw rocks at him while he was in the water, and he drowned. This resulted in a riot when police refused to arrest anyone for killing this young boy who was trying to swim and simply went over the line. They didn't say he went far. He simply went over the line. August 30th to 31st, the Knoxville riot in Kentucky. Again, the arrest of a black suspect on suspicion of murdering a white woman. A lynch mob stormed the county jail where they liberated, watch this, all 16 white prisoners, but including 3 suspected murderers. The mob attacked African American businesses and districts, and of course, they left 7 people dead, including the black man that was accused of a rape that there was no proof of. He was lynched in the crowd, body to be burned. Omaha, September 28th and 29th, another riot after 10,000 whites from South Omaha attacked and burned the county courthouse to force the release of a black prisoner accused of raping a white woman. The mob lynched the suspect. His name was Will Brown. They hung him and they burned his body and put it on display for the world to see. And after doing that, the group spread out and attacked the black neighborhoods, stores on the north side, destroying property at that time worth more than $1 million. Then there was the Elaine, Arkansas massacre, September 30th. It broke out in Elaine, Phillips County. And y'all, so much I could read there, but what I can tell you, at the end of 3 days of rioting by angry white people on unfounded charges against sharecroppers, in the area, against sharecroppers, people who were struggling as it was, at least 237 Black people were killed, and then it also throws in that 5 whites died in the violence, and it culminated with the Wilmington, North Carolina race riot, which was another violent riot as whites again stormed. Excuse me, Wilmington, Delaware, as whites again stormed black neighborhoods demanding justice on unfounded charges against a black man. It was the Red Summer. After the Red Summer, the next
Mm.
year you had Rosewood, and there's so many others to share. It's
Yeah,
a history
yeah.
of violence, and it ultimately culminated in what we've seen in 1921.
When you actually learn of some of the things that they did and how it reverberates, it makes sense that they're, Dr. Miller, that their descendants are fighting anything that looks like what we're calling this critical race theory. This is something that Elaine massacre of Arkansas. You're probably gonna have to do a whole nother show on that, Doc. You go,
Yes, sir.
you go. Them that was pure. That was a blood. That did not have to happen. The sharecroppers were trying to organize themselves to get a clean piece of the pie. That was
Mm-hmm.
it. And
That was
just
it.
so happened as they were organizing themselves and meeting inside the church, then one of them white boys got shot and killed. And the rest you'll see in the history books there. But just oh man, you definitely got to do something on.
Well, I tell you what, we will cover Elaine. I'm going to have you back for that one. Because again, that's more of untaught history. It's
Yes,
more
yes,
of
yes.
untaught history. And the reason I say it's untaught history, um, the response of government to what
Mhm.
happened in Oklahoma was not to go and help the black neighborhood, but they enacted what semblance of National Guard and militia that they had in the then growing new state of Oklahoma, and decided the best response was to bomb it. They
Mhm.
flew planes in overhead and they dropped bombs on an
Yeah.
American town because of the color of the skin of the inhabitants in that section of town.
It surprises me um, that it went so far. It
Mm-hmm.
surprises me to the sense that it went so far because outside of the South, going into Oklahoma and bridging part of Midwest, and we were our colors were free. We were able to do and have businesses and to grow and to do and to live and to thrive. And it was just surprisingly, and that it was just to demolish this entire community
Yeah.
and reparations and repair needs to happen. I was devastated by President Biden and today that did not uh, give the green light or to say yes, we're going to give. The case study has already been done 3 years ago. The state has already said if the findings come back, we'll go ahead. But 3 years later, we're still
Uh-huh.
sitting to where there's no reparations. 3 years
Yeah.
later, we're still here.
Well, when it comes to the subject of reparations, Dr. Dew, we are familiar, Bishop, that every other people in America where there
Mhm.
was some form of reparations to be paid, reparations was paid. And I
Mhm.
quickly want to remind folks, if you get the opportunity, two things. One, support Black News Channel. Support Black News Channel. They've been
Yeah.
having in their loop over the last couple of days many stories about Black Wall Street. So Black
Mhm.
News Channel, you're wondering where it's at? It's
Mhm.
as simple as you getting the app for Pluto TV. You can get it on
Mhm.
your Roku. You can get it on Apple. You can get it on your cell phone. You can get it on your iPad. You can get it on your computer. If you got one of those good TVs, I was fortunate to get one better than what I had. This one stays on instead of the screen going blank and me just hearing sound for
Oh.
5 minutes at a time. It has the Black News Channel app. It's
Yeah.
been a great source of information being shared. So please support Black News Channel. But then
And
also,
tonight, after this show ends tonight, for your those that are in our virtual audience, after this show ends tonight, I know there's a lot of you Tyler Perry fans out there, but X out the have and have-nots tonight and educate yourself on the OWN network tonight. She has a brilliant documentary on the Tulsa massacre
yeah,
tonight on OWN.
yeah, and for those who didn't see it, me and Pastor Hillis asked last week, and praying for you, Pastor Hillis. Mary, let her know we're praying for her. Um, Last week we asked everyone if you can for May 31st, see the documentary produced by Maverick Carter and LeBron James that came on CNN last night. Dreamland: The
Excellent,
Burning of Black Wall
excellent.
Street. It was excellent. The
Man.
first 16 minutes alone was so rich and dripping with
Woo!
history. The way it set up to the events of what happened on Black Wall Street.
Yeah.
Um, Something that I've shared before when it comes to blacks and brown people,
Mhm.
that those of us who like to claim, "Oh, I got Indian in my blood. I got Indian in my blood." You got to remember, during that time, Native Americans were content to fit in with white Americans, and so in doing so,
Come on.
a great number of them were slave owners. So the Creek
Mhm.
Nation, Choctaw,
Yeah.
uh, Seminoles, many of them were
Mhm.
slave owners. And
Slave.
during the Great March, or the March of Tears, I know I just mangled the name. During that march from the South to the Oklahoma Territory, you know what they took with them?
Mm.
Their most valuable possession, they're slaves. So
Wow.
right along with mules, horses, and bulls that were pulling their cattle carts, there were Negroes that were
Mhm.
pulling their cattle carts and their covered wagons, as well as they moved from the South to the Oklahoma Territory. And in doing so, once blacks were free from slavery, part of their deal in letting go of slaves, watch this, y'all,
Mm.
that those who were black that had either been slaves or
Mhm.
they were descendants of mixed ancestry, they would have no part in the land grants that were given from the U.S. to the natives when it came to what would be known as reservations. And so, for many of us that say, we got this in our blood, we got that in our blood, know that whatever it is you may have in your blood really don't want you as a part of the family.
Exactly. Well, your part Cherokee self, they don't want you.
Yeah, yeah. And so that history that they shared moving up to that, how there were land grants that were given. Many people were able to get up to 160 acres of land, and they also had the mineral rights to that land. Do you know how rich that could make someone when you own the mineral rights? And Tulsa, Oklahoma, overnight became a prosperous city because they struck black gold, they struck oil, and they quickly started to make moves to make sure that they could cut as many African Americans out of the piece of the pie that they so richly deserved in moving in to this new territory.
Yeah.
However,
Yeah.
the blacks persevered anyway.
Yeah, we did. Yes, we did. We pushed right on through. You know, those families of those descendants there. Um, I was watching one of the news shows early Saturday morning, and it was phenomenal to see all of us that was sitting there, those descendants of those that were there. Two attorneys that struck me on the Saturday morning show,
Hmm.
and they're not letting go by any means necessary. They're not letting go, and they're going to push. And thank goodness, because these news channels, outside of probably TV1 or the MSNBC and the CNN. Thank goodness on MSNBC there now sits an African American female president. So our stories are able to be told in these white newsrooms because at the helm there sits a black president, and our stories these stories of Tulsa, these stories of the 1919 in Elon, Arkansas, there. And I don't think you touched on the riot that was there, excuse me, in Chicago. The riot
No,
that
I
was
touched
there.
on it slightly.
Yeah. I mean, it's so much. It's so much, Dr. Miller, that we can transcend and go into. I think this has birthed something because so many are paying close attention, and a lot are saying, I never heard of that. I think you had a post. Dr. James came on your post and was talking and said, "This is good history." Dr. James is a well-educated man, and
That's my
he came
cousin.
on.
Good family, good family.
And I like Dr. James, man. He came on, but I was just surprised that his commentary was, "Where did you get this information?" I didn't know. And all the course of the weekend, what have we heard? I didn't know. Are you serious,
Yeah.
Pastor Duke? I did not know this. Where can I get more? Facebook was lit up Sunday night of the documentary with LeBron James and them had produced. I was happy. I was so happy to see everyone in conversations that have been talking about Tulsa, but we got to pull ourselves up by the bootstraps, and there needs to be some payback. You
And,
got
and and as I said about pulling ourselves up about by our bootstraps, because that's something that is said often by those on the other side of the racial divide. They would say, "Go to work, get a job, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, stand up for yourself."
uh-huh.
Well, America, what you see is when African Americans had pulled themselves up by the proverbial bootstrap, you destroyed their town,
My
not
God,
just once, but many times. Colfax,
yeah, yeah,
Rosewood,
yeah,
even up in New York.
yeah,
I've
yeah.
got more than 30 cities where they had been riots where white Americans destroyed black areas of town simply because, as it was shared by Brother Terrence Godfrey, the
Mhm.
threat of black prosperity or black prosperity was a threat to white supremacy,
Yeah.
which, as you bring up, I didn't know, it brings up the next thing that we need to talk about tonight, and
Mhm.
that is education or the lack of education thereof.
The
Um,
lack thereof. Yeah.
Last week we were talking about critical race theory, and I'm so glad that my good Facebook brother Kevin Oliver down in Atlanta, Georgia, he's an attorney. He brought up whenever someone brings up a progressive move in the black community where we are doing for self, the first thing that comes up is the boogeyman
Mm.
known as communism. They
My God.
said A. Philip Randolph, communist.
Mm.
Martin Luther King, communist.
Wow.
CRT, communist. And Dr.
Mm.
King even said to be communist is antithetical to being a Christian.
Yes, yes.
And so when it comes to critical race theory and those that are saying that it's indoctrination,
Mm.
uh, here's the first thing of indoctrination. And America, if y'all get mad at me, get mad. You know, the first thing that was indoctrination for us is when we got in kindergarten and you wanted to make sure that we knew the Pledge of Allegiance, that
Hey,
we
hey.
pledged to the flag. You cannot say that was not indoctrination. Do I
Hmm.
love my country? Yes. When I joined the Marines, I pledged to protect this country, its constitution, its people. I wanted to go all out as a Marine. But I also recognize as a private citizen that I have the right not to pledge. I have the right not to allow myself to be indoctrinated. I have the right to educate myself on things. So, critical race theory, my brothers and dear sisters, it is
Hmm.
not indoctrination.
No.
Unfortunately, or fortunately, it is revealing untaught American history.
Hmm. But you know, that's two parts to that critical race theory that we're touching on. But the one part is that white supremacy,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then it's the social or the structural racism,
Yeah,
that exists and that maintains what the power. So you got to look at it in those two forms. You got to look at this. There's no way that we cannot insert in to our historical studies or your studies in going from junior high to high that you're not, besides learning about Malcolm, they'll just touch a little bit on Malcolm.
and then they lie on that touch.
They play it safe, thinking they can just talk on Brother Malcolm a little bit, because then it paints an ugly picture of the nation. So
Mm-hmm.
then they're back happy because they've divided us again in talking about the Nation of Islam. And so then they feel happy of speaking a little bit about Brother Malcolm.
Mm-hmm.
And then looking at, of course, Martin Luther King, and giving us just these water loopholes into such a rich history, but never diving deep of us learning um, of our sharecroppers, more
Right.
than just bussing over from busing over from Central America or from Tijuana over here and giving them a pass. We live in California, and so getting them to come and get a day pass to till our lands. Our people was already out there tilling lands, but they stole
Mm-hmm.
those lands from us. They stole those lands from us. And I don't even think even the American Indians. I don't even. I think that even some of theirs is still stolen from them. You know.
Right.
Um, but this is something that's critical. Right. This is this that's. I'm wrapping my mind around it, but those two areas of of this white supremacy, um, and then the white supremacy, and then uh, the structural racism that's there.
Yeah. When as you touched on Brother Malcolm and Dr. King, and I found this picture, and I can't put it up right now, but I can read what was on the picture. And here's
Hmm.
what I say: even on that touch for Malcolm, it was a lie. So
Hmm.
here's what the pictures. It was a moment in time. The one time there was a picture of Dr. King and Malcolm X, Malik El Haj Shabazz meeting,
Hmm.
and they're shaking hands. It said Martin Luther King Jr. believed in the teaching of Mahatma Gandhi and promoted peaceful methods to achieve equal rights through rallies and civil disobedience. He won the Nobel Prize in 1964 for his efforts. He was assassinated April 4th, 1968, in Memphis, Tennessee, on a hotel balcony. But listen to
Mm,
what it says about Malcolm. Listen to what it says
mm,
about Malcolm. Hey, Brother Corey, good to see you. Here's what it says about Malcolm. Malcolm X also headed rallies and gave speeches, but adopted the teachings of Muslim leader Elijah Muhammad, leading him to promote violence in his followers in order for them to achieve the same
mm.
civil rights according to whites.
My
Malcolm
goodness.
never promoted violence. He did promote self-defense. As he once said, "You hit me, I got
Wow.
the right to hit you back."
I got
There's
the
a
right.
difference, huh?
I got the right.
You know, and so one of the things, again, when it comes to critical race theory, it's oftentimes exposing history that this country did not want taught. Texas, the state of Texas, has banned critical race theory. The
Come on.
Southern Baptist Convention has banned critical race theory in its colleges and universities. Many
Wow.
southern states with Republican leadership are also banning critical race theory. The state of Oklahoma is not only banning or seeking to ban critical race theory, it has also banned teaching about the bombing and the massacre of the Greenwood district of Black Wall Street in Tulsa,
Wow.
Oklahoma, because
Wow.
they said it may offend white students to learn that history.
Mm, mm,
In Texas, it is okay to teach blacks being immigrants, but not to tell the truth that they weren't immigrants, they were slaves who were forcibly brought here. That's what
mm.
critical race theory teaches,
That's
the
what.
truth. It allows you to look into the truth
Right.
instead of trying to spray perfume on crap thinking it's going to smell better.
Hmm.
So the state of Texas has textbooks that says African immigrants, doesn't call them
Hmm.
slaves, but call them African immigrants, which would also lead us to believe that coming up later on this month, that Texas still really ain't too happy about the celebration of Juneteenth.
You're right about that. Texas is so mad. I'm not gonna get on. I'm not gonna get on Texas. I'm gonna celebrate this walkout from the Democrats of the state house, and Governor Abbott threatened to take away their $600 a month check. So but they won. Well, which watch this. They won the battle of. I mean, because our democracy is at stake. And so you're taking away soul to the polls and all of this down there in Texas. But watch this theory that they there in Texas was getting ready to pass where a judge can literally overturn the entire election. If this group of people say we don't like the outcome, we just get one of our hillbilly grandsons that's there. Excuse my vernacular tonight. That's on the bench now serving a federal judge now that's serving state judge, excuse me, that's serving that would be able to overturn that state's election. Um, there's a lot at stake, but the John Lewis Voting Act, I believe we were on before somewhere on some platform, and I was continuing to say that our elected members of Congress. That's why
Yeah.
Joe Biden, I wasn't moved with the speech. I was glad he went first president to go, yes. But I wasn't moved because they didn't talk about anything other than just theory stuff. But the John Lewis Voting Act needs to pass. Call your elected officials and tell them to put it up for a vote. It has to happen. Then we can move away from all of these Jim Crow 2.0 voting stuff, that's shenanigans that's going on if they would pass the John Lewis voting.
Right, such as the state of Georgia, where they are able, with from the governor's office, to move and to take over the results
Yeah.
of a local election. When you enact laws to ensure that you win an election, that's not democracy,
That's not.
and it's worse than hypocrisy.
It's bad.
You are literally practicing a bastardized form of communism yourself while
Yeah.
you're attempting to say that teaching critical race theory is communism, or that Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was a communist, or that any other great move that had happened within the African American community was communist. Unless they outright said that they were communist, socialist, or Marxist, you
Yeah.
cannot categorize them as that until their works show otherwise. But this
Right.
country has had a proven history
Prove
of using that boogeyman of communism to scare the other white folk into thinking them Negroes trying to do something wrong now.
Yeah, yeah, and they'll go back to their same playbook. They'll go back to their same playbook where we'll scare the living daylights out of suburbia America, and tell them that we want open borders. No, we don't. That nothing is getting done. And they'll go back to the same storylines of the do nothing, but we have to do something.
I mean,
We have to.
after all, as you said, scare tactics, that is what the former president did running up to the election, saying that they want to take their Section 8 and their welfare and move into your suburban neighborhoods.
Well, don't fool yourself. I go to a little cafe outside of in the Livermore area, and I'm sure people may have saw that their city council is at a battle because what 15% of the units that's in one of these really nice that they're building there is supposed to be public housing, and they don't want in Livermore to give up, what is that, 3 units for low income housing. It's more than African Americans that's on low income housing. It's a whole lot more that no,
Absolutely.
whole lot more that need a
So
little assistance and help, especially how, and I know we're getting out of time, but especially how high it is here in the Bay Area. There's a whole lot of people that'll be signed up for low income housing, more than
show
just
enough.
African Americans. More.
Show, show enough. So last week, as we are inside of this last 10 minutes, the time goes quick when you get on here, my brother.
Oh
Uh,
my gosh. I gotta come back when you and Dr. Hill, when y'all are together. I want to be with y'all too. So bad. Man.
we're going to have you up in here, up in here, up
Man,
in
I
here.
will have a ball with you two. I will have a ball.
Look at. So I've had one of the godfathers of civil rights movement here in the Bay Area, Reverend Arnold Townsend, on, vice president of San Francisco NAACP, and was grateful for when I had him on that occasion, because as we were talking about teaching history properly, he suggested something that I think it's high time we look at. He said when he was coming up, he looked at kids in the Asian community, in the Latino community, um, in the Jewish community. On Saturdays, they didn't come out early in the morning with the rest of them because they had to go to their local mosque, church, synagogue, community center, temple, where they had Saturday school for a few hours. And it was in that Saturday school that they were learning their history, that they were learning financial empowerment, financial literacy. They was learning about all those things that are lacking in our community. And from what he said, I said, that's something that maybe we need to start implementing in our churches.
I like that.
Getting
I like that.
Finding some folk in our churches,
I like
and
that.
not just for your church membership to grow, but for our community to grow. God will
Community.
allow your membership to grow if we're doing this, but
The
for our
church is in the
community to
community
grow.
for the community. Yeah.
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 So, so I wanted to get your thoughts on a Saturday school setup, Saturday tutorial setup, Saturday learning setup in our churches, and how do you think we might be able to partner with other churches to make something like that happen?
I think that is, I think you're spot on, um, because knowledge is power, and power is knowledge. And so to empower our community, I'm all for. I don't even care how we do it. My door at Shekinah Glory Worship Center, Oakland, is open. If it's something that's going to empower our people, a Saturday that's going to empower a group of young people to come together to learn critical race theory, or to come together to be able to, for us to empower our people about our history, literacy within finance, literature. I mean, even our young people today that are faced with the challenge of, and you know this well, of even how to fill out the application for them to be able to get into school, let alone the packet at Lane or Hayward, or
Yeah,
or Merritt up here. It's the whole packet is to be able a place to learn, a place to be able, a safe place, to be able to learn and to grow. I'm with you.
yeah. One of those things that we can even keep alive, and I may sound old fashioned with this, but it won't be too long before I could write a letter to you in cursive, and the younger folk won't know what the hell I wrote because technology has made it to where they don't know how to write in cursive. They don't know script. Um, and I know that we can do so much on our phones and on our computers and things like that. But remember when going to school, it was reading, writing, arithmetic? Well, we've got,
Typing class, doc. Typing
yeah,
class.
yeah, some basics. Look, even home ec is no longer taught in schools, which
Mhm.
taught our kids how to manage checkbooks and basic things for living. These
Mhm.
are some things we could incorporate
Yeah.
into some kind of Saturday functions. And look, don't get mad, parents. Don't get your kids mad. It ain't got to be every Saturday.
Right, right. But
Although I know some.
we need to. We need to be, if we're not hard on our own people, on our own community, then those other persuasions, other ethnic groups, they don't mind being hard on theirs, because being hard on them brings out the best inside of
Yeah,
them, brings out the best chemics, the best lawyers, the best. And I mean, if we don't pull that out of ours, we're going to be, we're going to be lost um, in moving forward together.
and we've got to start pulling the best out of them. And if we're
Yeah.
going to pull the best out of our young people, we've got to put the best that we have in them. We have to make deposits into our children if we
Yes.
want to
Yes.
be able to make a future withdrawal for our community.
Doc, in saying pulling the best, some people are, visual, and so with, my two younger children, even my older kids, I set up, even though it was kind of, for me, but I had set up, inside of their rooms, to have in Maurice's room, to have Morehouse banner
Hmm.
in his room, in Liege's room, to have Spellman there, just to be able to see that the sky is the limit.
Yeah,
Sky's the
absolutely.
limit. And having something to be locked in, and then on their own to do a little research there to see what's going on there. Now, I'm just sharing some personal things that I've done, to inspire, you know, my children in my own home, you know.
Yeah. Well, look, we've hit that last minute. Uh, I told you time flies. Pastor
Time flies
Dew,
when you're having fun.
yeah. Tell the people how they can get in contact with you, where they can come and worship with you at, opportunities to worship, different ways to worship.
Different ways. And let me first say, Dr. Miller, thank you so much, and we're certainly praying for Dr. Hillis and his wife. Oh, praying for his wife, and as he's there with her, and I appreciate you so much. This 100 years ago, armed white men set about systematically killing, looting, and burning Black Wall Street in Tulsa. 300 Black people were murdered. No one was ever prosecuted. No one was ever
No.
prosecuted. Thank you, Dr. Miller. You can find me on Facebook, Leonard Maurice Dew, the church that I am just so grateful to be the under shepherd, Shekinah Glory Worship Center, located in Oakland, 10810 Bancroft Avenue in Oakland. Our services are still virtual. We are open for those to come in. Face masks and social distancing is still required, probably until end of September. But you're more than welcome to come worship with us on Wednesday nights. Are our Bible study Word Impact night, and we're on Facebook for our Word Impact at 7:30 p.m. And actually, tomorrow we have a guest speaker from Louisiana that will be with us. He's a native of the Bay Area. He's coming in town. Elder Darnell Harris will be with me on tomorrow night, in the sanctuary. So
All
look
right.
me up. We have some good things going at Shekinah Glory Worship Center.
Amen. And look, again, thank you for being on with us tonight. As always, we must be like those of the tribe of Issachar, those who had
Hey,
understanding of the times in order that they might tell Israel what they ought to do. And
my
we
God.
have to be astute and aware of what's going on around us so that we can share with you, our people, how it is we ought to act, react, respond, where we can be proactive, and those things we can do to uplift our community and to honor God. As we close tonight, I just want to share with my brother, Pastor Hillis. We're praying for you. We're praying for Mary. There's a whole lot that's going on in the life and family of Pastor Hillis. His mom, as many know, is on hospice care at this time. His wife is undergoing surgery right now. So please
Jesus.
just lift our brother in prayer and just pray for him because it's his season, just as you would want someone to pray for you during yours. Again, I want to thank Pastor Dew for hanging out with me for the last hour. All of you that took time out, thought it not robbery to get on your computers, cell phones, tablets, and pay attention to us, listen to us, even participate. We say thank you. I again want to remind you, go ahead, get that Pluto app. Look at Support Black News Channel. They've been having some excellent stories, and I have been in full support of most of what I've heard on there. Started by former Congressman from Oklahoma, J.C. Watts, and a couple of his partners. And the reporting has been anything but leaning to his Republican leadings. I found it to be straight down the middle for the most part. So support BNC. Look it up. Pay attention to it. And even go on Facebook, like their page there. You can catch some of their stories on Facebook. And then as for me, I'll be back here Thursday night as we will be back in our Bible study, closing out the doctrine of Christ. It's been an exciting study so far. Not closing out, two more to go, looking at the doctrine of
Mhm.
Christ, and then we'll be headed into the doctrine of the Holy Spirit when we finish those classes. And you can catch us at the Way Christian Church, Stockton, California, 1409 West Oak Street, and our services at 1 p.m. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for hanging out. May the Lord bless and keep you and yours. Thank you, my brother, for hanging out with us tonight, and give my sister D a hug.
Will do. Will do. Be blessed.
Peace.